Hey, it's Terry here, and we are going to start this unit by talking about why we study art. You'll have my little floating head here in the PowerPoint to give you some information and elaborate. Okay, oops. To begin, art is considered to be, got something in my way here, amongst the highest expressions of culture. Now, you say, what is culture? Right, you hear that word? Oh, and I have these little notations here, just letting you know who had these ideas, so you know I'm not pulling them out of the air. You don't need to know that it's Francis Bacon that said this. It's really just more so I'm citing my sources, and if you know you've got an academic interest, you can follow it down the rabbit hole. So Francis Bacon, the philosopher, deemed culture to be a process of individual enrichment. When we're talking about culture too, we could be talking about a group's particular way of life. So, you know, like American culture. Culture could be an activity. So you can go to the theater, the symphony, the museum. We're kind of missing those cultural outlets right now, but you know, there are virtual ways to explore culture in this way. Art is pervasive across all cultures and times. Now, a lot of scholars believe that art is one of the things that separates humans from the animals, the creation of art. We study art to contribute to the dialogue surrounding the shifting definitions of what art is. Artists are still working. We're in the contemporary period right now, which is the art period that started in about 1970 and is running through to the present. So you know, us artists are changing what the definition of art is as we work. Plain and simple, we study art to experience it and enjoy it. It's cool, it's neat. We study art to understand more about the cultures that produce the artworks. Art is not created in a vacuum, so we can tell a lot about cultures based on the artistic expressions that are coming out of them. Studying art teaches one to think critically. Now, this is a big idea. This is one of the main ideas of the course. We hear the word critical or thinking critically, and a lot of folks associate that with you know, negative thought or thinking negatively. In the art world, when we say to think critically, it basically means to kind of question what's being put in front of you, to look beyond the surface of things. And, you know, I understand that some of you may never look at, or may look at few artworks again in your life. I'd be sad if that's the case. However, critical thought is something that is beneficial across disciplines. Thinking critically is good no matter what field you go into. Hopefully, you get pushed out of your comfort zone a little bit in this class. And finally, you may develop some new personal insights. Who knows? Fingers crossed there. All right, creative thinking, the next topic in this unit. So, you know, we hear that word creativity a lot. What is creativity? It's generally understood to be the process wherein something new is formed. So this could be something tangible, like a painting or an invention. It could also be something intangible, like an idea, scientific theory, or even a joke. Creativity can be fostered and improved. There's a discussion that we're going to get into in the next topic, talking about skill versus talent. And I don't know, there are some scholars that say talent's a thing. I'm kind of one of those that think that just like a lot of things, creativity can be fostered and improved. It's like, you know, if you have a muscle that you never exercise, it's gonna get smaller. But if you're pumping your creative muscle up, it's gonna get stronger. So this is M. Mumford is the philosopher that was saying that the contemporary understanding is that something new is produced when creativity is being utilized. And it's kind of akin to the scientific method. So creative thinking is a process of becoming aware of problems, identifying the difficulty, seeking solutions, testing it out, and finally being able to communicate the results. If you can't communicate those results, whether it be in the form of a report on your scientific findings or a presentation of your art, who's going to know about it, right? Some historical perspectives, this is more just so we're kind of grounding what we're talking about when we're talking about creativity, creative thought, that type of thing. The historical understanding hasn't always been the same as it is today. The ancient Greeks, Chinese, and Indians saw creativity as a form of discovery or imitation of nature. And that's a big one. About 1824, I believe it was, there was an invention that was created called the camera, the photograph, that sort of, it made the artist's job less about capturing nature. But, there's a lot of years in between these ancient civilizations we're talking about and the 1820s, right? In the West, our notion of creativity is closely tied into Judeo-Christian thought, specifically the divine creation story from the book of Genesis in the Bible. Along that line of thinking, the Renaissance, circa 1500 CE, prior to that, humans, from about the 3rd century to 1500, humans weren't considered capable of independent creation without divine inspiration, without God's help. And it was really the Renaissance mental shift or thought shift towards human-centered creation, so humanism, that we started to see humans, individuals, as the source of creative expression rather than, there are still some folks that think that creative expression is divine, but it tends to be more of a mainstream belief that humans are the source of creative expression. It's kind of just repeating what I was saying there. In the 18th century, we start to see the notion of genius come about. This is, somebody who is so skilled in their creativity and their creation. During this time, we see creativity and imagination becoming linked as well. 1927, so only about 100 years ago, was the term creativity coined by philosopher Albert North Whitehead. And finally, in the 1950s, it started to become accepted that creativity is really separate from IQ. Now, IQ itself is sort of a flawed method of it's a culturally biased test. It's kind of a flawed method of finding somebody's intelligence. But the 1950s, it held a little bit more water. All right, so moving forward, talking about critical thinking. I had mentioned that earlier. No, critical thinking is not negative thinking. It is just kind of looking beyond the surface of things. Let me move my face here. All right, so there's a book that I was reading called The World of Art by a guy named Henry Sayre. And he gives a good kind of checklist that you can tick off when you're viewing art to give you 7 steps to thinking critically about the art that's in front of you. So this is good to reference when you're viewing any art. Number 1, identify the artist's decisions and choices. Number 2, ask questions and be curious. This could be, considering the title of the work. Is there anything that you know about the artist? You may not even know who the artist is. Is there, if you're viewing it online or in a museum, is there a written accompaniment with the artwork that can give you more information? Number 3, simply describe the object. How does one part relate to another? Number 4, question your assumptions. And this is essential to thinking critically. Especially, you want to try and identify any immediate dislike that you have of the artwork. Maybe think why people might like it, why this artwork was created. And you should really examine your biases and prejudices here. Number 5, try to avoid an overly emotional response. The contemporary definition of art is generally accepted to be something that evokes emotion in the viewer. So, if you are feeling an emotional response, that's great. The art's doing its job. However, you want to try not to get too absorbed by those emotions. The art is evoking feelings that can sometimes get in the way of clear thinking. So try to look a little bit beyond that. And, you know, analyze and try to determine what in the work set those emotions off, right? Don't oversimplify or misrepresent the object. So still, you know, looking beyond the surface, critical thought requires that you look beyond initial appearances. And finally, tolerate uncertainty. In our society, we tend to think a lot about the destination rather than the journey, and you know what right answers are, what truth is. Sometimes there's not a right answer. Sometimes the journey is the destination, if you guys get what I'm saying. So sometimes just asking good questions about an artwork is a great way to think critically about it. Okay, that wraps up our first little video. Thank you for staying with me, and stay tuned for more content.